Hello everybody, I'm Dan Murrell and welcome to another edition of Charts with Dan. I apologize if my energy is a little off today. I am still recovering from my all-nighter covering this year's Academy Awards. If you haven't seen my recap of the Oscars yet, you can check that out right now here on the channel. But we are looking at other things that happened this past weekend, things that weren't the Oscars, and that is the weekend box office. And let's jump right into it. At number one was Hoppers, which dropped 37% in weekend number two. That's not a bad hold. It made $28.6 million. Its domestic total right now is at $86.9 million. When you look at where Hoppers falls right now as far as domestic gross for all theatrically released Pixar films, this doesn't include the ones that went to streaming first, it is currently above Onward, which had its theatrical run cut short by the COVID pandemic back in 2020, but it's also outgrossed Elio, which was last summer's Pixar release. It's got a little ways to go before it gets up into the area of Lightyear and The Good Dinosaur, but it's out of the basement, which is always a good thing to see. In second place was the latest Colleen Hoover adaptation, Reminders of Him, which opened to $17.9 million. This was a little bit higher than the opening we saw for Regretting You last year, but it is well below the big opening for It Ends With Us a couple of years ago. But when we look at 2026's domestic opening weekends, Reminders of Him is the seventh highest opening of the year, right behind Iron Lung, which was at number 6. And we've been getting a top 10 opener, I think, for the last 3 or 4 consecutive weekends, which is a good sign for the 2026 box office. In third place was the newest A24 film, Undertone, which looked like it was received about like we're used to seeing from A24 horror, a bit divisive, but with the budget point, I think it's going to be a profitable movie. It opened to $9.3 million. In fourth place was Scream 7, which dropped 50% in week number 3, not quite as big as its weekend 2 drop. It brought in another $8.5 million, and it's now the first domestic film of 2026 to cross the $100 million barrier. When you look at the Scream franchise by domestic gross, Scream 7 is now really less than $2 million away from bypassing Scream 6 to become the highest grossing film in the franchise domestically. We'll look at worldwide numbers a little bit later. When you adjust those numbers for inflation, Scream 7 is currently the 5th highest grossing film of the series. I think it's going to get up to number 4. I can't imagine it not making another $10 million. But as I mentioned last week, it is still going to fall far short of Scream 3, which is at $182.6 million domestically. In fifth place was GOAT, which continues to hold well in its 5th weekend. It dropped 28% and brought in another $4.67 million. It's at $90.5 million. I didn't say 6-7 on purpose, by the way. People keep saying that I do. Trust me, I'm not that hip. In 6th place was The Bride, which went into absolute free fall in weekend number 2 after an already disappointing opening. It dropped 70%, brought in just over $2 million. We knew that this movie was pretty much DOA when it debuted last weekend. There's no reanimating it, and the second weekend just kind of proved that. It's at just $11.3 million domestic. In 7th place was an IMAX re-release of Kiki's Delivery Service, which is a really beautiful film from Studio Ghibli. It made $1.67 million. Again, I didn't do that on purpose. Wuthering Heights is at number 8. It dropped 55% in its 5th weekend at $1.67 million. I swear, I'm not doing it on purpose. It's the box office sites. $81.9 million domestically for Wuthering Heights. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, The Secret of the Ooze made me feel old this past weekend because it had its 35th anniversary re-release and it opened to $1.47 million in 9th place. And at number 10 in its 5th weekend was Crime 101. It brought in $1.1 million. It's at $35.5 million domestically. Dropping out of the top 10 this week, we had Send Help, which is out after an impressive box office run of 6 weeks. Epic, Elvis Presley in Concert is out after 3 weeks, as is I Can Only Imagine 2. And the re-release of Demon Slayer, Infinity Castle, is out of the top 10 after 1 week. Looking at the biggest theater count changes for this past weekend, for some reason, Anaconda decided to go back into wide release by adding 994 theaters. I have no idea why. Maybe it's a joke. That's just a weird move. But it had the biggest theater count change of the weekend at 994 theaters added. Losing 835 theaters was Epic, Elvis Presley in Concert. It's now in 1,130. Send Help lost a big chunk of its theaters, 720 of them. It's now in under 1,000 theaters at 930. Wuthering Heights lost 611 theaters. It's still in 1,900 theaters. And Crime 101 lost 600 theaters. It's now in just over 1,300 theaters. This is the box office chart that looks at the 2026 box office versus the 2025 box office week by week. And you can see that March has been a really good box office year compared to last year, because for the third consecutive weekend, we were above where we were at the same point in 2025. This weekend was 59.7% better than what we saw last year, which was the debut of Novocaine. And it really comes down to movies that are opening well, movies that are holding a little bit better, or at least drawing more people. And I think we should see a pretty good number next week with the debut of Project Hail Mary, which is projected to potentially put up some really big box office numbers. Box office year to date is at 1.37 billion. And just a reminder, I do look at cumulative year-to-date box office at the end of every month, but I don't do it every single week. So it was kind of a ready, steady weekend at the box office. But as I mentioned, the Academy Awards were on Sunday. And anytime we know who the Best Picture winner is, I like to look at it in context of other recent Best Picture wins to see what it looks like through a box office perspective. So let's look at the newly anointed Best Picture winner, One Battle After Another, and how it compares to the other films that have won in the last 10 years. It is the fourth highest grossing Best Picture winner domestically in the last decade at $72.3 million. It comes in behind Everything Everywhere All at Once, Green Book, and then Oppenheimer, which has $330 million to Green Book's $85 million in second place. Oppenheimer really the only blockbuster that's won Best Picture in the last 10 years. One Battle After Another comes in just ahead of The Shape of Water, which made $63.8 million. Then we have Parasite in sixth place. Look at where it is domestically versus the next chart we're going to look at. Moonlight at $27.8 million. Last year's winner, Anora, in eighth place at $20.4 million. Nomadland, which was mostly a streaming release, at $3.7 million. And Coda, which was entirely a streaming release. No box office data domestically for that movie. These are the last 10 Best Picture winners looking at worldwide gross. Of course, we have Oppenheimer still there at number one, almost $1 billion grossing film at $975.8 million. Green Book actually in second place. I think a lot of people might be surprised that it made $321.7 million worldwide. Parasite, though, when you look at this chart, is the third highest grossing Best Picture winner of the last 10 years. Probably no coincidence that it's also an international film, so it is higher on this chart than it is on the domestic chart at $263 million. One Battle After Another stays in fourth place there at $209.6 million, with The Shape of Water at $195.2 million. Everything Everywhere All at Once is in sixth place on the worldwide chart at $147 million. And those six movies are the only six out of the last 10 that have grossed over $100 million worldwide. Moonlight, Anora, Nomadland, and Coda round out that top 10. And looking at Best Picture winners and box office takes us to our Charts with Dan trivia question this week. I mentioned that Oppenheimer was almost $1 billion grossing movie. There have been 60 movies that have grossed over $1 billion worldwide, according to Box Office Mojo. 9 of them have been nominated for Best Picture, but I want to know how many of those 9 have won. I'll give you a second to think about it. You don't have to think too far because billion-dollar grossing movies have really only been around for the last 30 years. I'll give you about 5 more seconds because here comes the answer. The answer is 2. Titanic and The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King are the only $2 billion+ grossing movies to win Best Picture. We've talked about it a lot on the show that the Oscars have moved away largely from giving Best Picture to big blockbuster films. And who knows? Who knows when that third one will get added to this list? Last week, I asked members here on the channel who they thought would win Best Picture at the Oscars. Predictably, of course, it was a 2-movie race, but the prognosticators out there in the audience got it right. 71 votes came in for One Battle After Another. 65 votes came in for Sinners, and I think if we got the raw totals for the Academy, it would also be a pretty close race. Hamnet had 4 votes in third place to Sinners' 65 votes. 3 people said that F1 would win. 2 people said that Frankenstein would win, as well as Marty Supreme and The Secret Agent. There was a single vote each for Sentimental Value and Train Dreams, and Poor Begonia had absolutely no support among members here on the channel. Nobody held out a faint hope that it would even win Best Picture. And that brings us to our member poll question for this week. As I mentioned, Project Hail Mary is projected to put up some impressive numbers at the box office this weekend. So what I want to know, I want to ask you to tell the future once again, since you did so good this past week. How much money do you think the Project Hail Mary will make domestically this weekend? You've got 3 options. more than $65 million, $50 to $65 million, which is where it's basically projected to open right now? Or do you think it's going to underperform projections and come in at less than $50 million? Vote right now. If you're a member here on the channel, the results will be revealed on next week's Charts with Dan, where we will also know the answer to this question. And if you're not a member here on the channel and you'd like to become one, you don't just get to vote in the member poll each and every week. You also get early access to some of my videos. You get custom badges and emoji down in the chat, and I'd love to have you come and join the conversation. Let's turn now to the international box office, which is all markets outside of the US and Canada. And for a second straight weekend, Hoppers is also the #1 movie internationally. It made $31 million. That's a 26.2% drop, so it holds well around the world as well. In second place was Pegasus at $10.8 million. That's a 54% international drop. The King's Warden has really been holding well. This is a South Korean film. It dropped 22% and actually went up one spot from last weekend at $10.55 million. Reminders of Him opens with $9.96 million internationally, and Scream 7 dropped 39.7% to bring in $9.4 million. When you take those international numbers and you combine them with the domestic grosses for this past weekend, we get our top 5 films worldwide, and Hoppers ended up bringing in $59.6 million around the globe in its second weekend for a 31.7% drop. It's now brought in $165 million worldwide. Reminders of Him brought in $27.9 million worldwide on its opening weekend. Scream 7 dropped 45.1% to bring in $17.9 million. It's now at $177.1 million globally. GOAT is back in the top 5. It made $13.7 million. It's at $162.7 million domestic. And The King's Warden dropped 21.5% for a $10.95 million weekend and a global total now over $90 million. This is the franchise tracker for Pixar when you look at it by worldwide gross, and this does include movies like Luca and Turning Red and Soul that are not on the domestic chart because there were some international theatrical releases for those films. You can see that Hoppers currently is number 25 out of 30. When we look at the highest grossing Pixar films, it's above all of the pandemic movies, so Onward, which was affected, Soul, Luca, and Turning Red. It has also outgrossed Elio worldwide already. Elio brought in $154.2 million, but it's got a ways to go before it catches Lightyear and even further to go before it gets up to the Good Dinosaur range. So we'll see what the legs look like on Hoppers. We've got the Mario movie coming out in a couple weeks. I don't know if that's going to cut into its business. And it kind of underscores what I was talking about last week with the movie, which is that it's good that it is doing better than Elio. And I think that it could turn out to be a modest success for Pixar. We'll see what the next few weeks hold. But this is not a return to form box office wise. And yes, obviously a lot of the movies that we're talking about that are so high up on these charts came out pre-COVID. There is a new normal to adjust for, but there are some Pixar movies that are higher than Hoppers that came out post-COVID. So I think the jury is still out on what Hoppers is going to do. It's not, I don't think you could call it a failure. I don't see it landing anywhere in the failure range. I think what we're probably looking at much more likely is a somewhat modest success. This is the franchise tracker for Scream, and it is now the highest grossing film in the franchise when you look at it worldwide at $177.1 million. It unseats the original film, which was #1 at $173 million. So Scream 7 can now lay claim to the highest grossing film in the franchise worldwide, and it should very soon be able to also claim the title for highest grossing film in the franchise domestically. We've got a lot more to get to today, but before we do, I want to thank the sponsor for this week's video, Factor. The winter storms have mostly passed, which means it's time to start filling your schedule up with springtime activities like enjoying the outdoors and shoveling snow if you're in a place where the winter storms haven't passed yet. But a busy schedule shouldn't stop you from eating well, and that is where Factor comes in. Factor meals are full of quality, functional ingredients like lean proteins and healthy fats that fit your goals no matter what they are, whether that's eating healthier or adding protein to your diet. They arrive at your door always fresh, never frozen, and they're ready to eat in about 2 minutes. On next week's menu, you can get dishes like grilled filet mignon with crispy Parmesan shrimp, alongside meals like teriyaki shredded chicken, and one of my favorites, the queso poblano chicken. And variety is never a problem because Factor has 100 rotating weekly meals, including the new Muscle Pro collection, which supports strength and recovery. I have a really weird, unpredictable schedule, and it's always good to know that I have some Factor meals in the fridge that are going to be ready to eat when I'm able to eat. It takes a lot of the stress out of the day. Head to factormeals.com/Murrell50off and use code Murrell50off to get 50% off and free breakfast for a year. Offer only valid for new Factor customers with code and qualifying auto-renewing subscription purchase. That's factormeals.com/Murrell50off with code Murrell50off. Make healthier eating easy with Factor. Let's look now at what I call some of our specialty charts, and we'll start with the top per theater averages this past weekend. With Oscar season behind us, we're in a bit of a lull right now for these smaller movies that rack up big grosses and limited release. So a lot of these are the wide release studio films. Hoppers is at number 1, again bringing in $7,165 per theater in 4,000 theaters. So that's $7,165 per theater. Kiki's Delivery Service brought in $6,734 per theater in just 249 theaters. So a good activation of the IMAX format there. Reminders of Him brought in $5,285 per theater in just over 3,400 theaters. The only limited release film on this chart for a second weekend is Silver Star, which was in 2 theaters and brought in $3,750 per theater. And then we have A24's Undertone with $3,634 per theater in each of its 2,570 theaters. These were the top films in limited release this past weekend, which I define as 1,000 theaters or fewer. Kiki's Delivery Service leads the way in 249 premium format theaters at $1.67 million. Slanted was in 588 theaters and brought in $624,000. The 2026 Oscar shorts, there were a lot of people that were trying to get those in before the ceremony. It brought in $386,000. Then we have the re-release of Demon Slayer Infinity Castle, bringing in $352,000 in its second weekend in 478 theaters. And Sirat, a double Oscar nominee in 174 theaters, brought in just over $200,000. This is the 2026 annual domestic box office, and these are the movies that have been released in 2026. Right now, the highest grossing film of the year is Scream 7. We will see what kind of progress Hoppers makes over the next week. It could potentially be number 1 by next week. GOAT is currently the number 2 movie of the year at $90.5 million. Hoppers is up 2 spots. It's now the 3rd highest grossing film of 2026. Wuthering Heights and Send Help are both down 1 spot to numbers 4 and 5. Iron Lung stays at number 6, followed by Crime 101 and Primate. Solo Mio jumps up 1 spot to number 9, and 28 years later, The Bone Temple. It's probably its last week on this chart because it's clinging on there at number 10. This is the domestic box office for this year when you look at all tickets sold since January 1st, and we're starting to see more releases from 2026 moving up this chart. Avatar: Fire and Ash is still the highest grossing film as far as ticket sales since the beginning of the year at $152.9 million. But Scream 7 has now joined it in the $100 million club at $106.7 million. GOAT is up 1 spot to number 3, bumping Zootopia 2 down to number 4. Hoppers jumps up 4 spots to enter the top 5 at $86.9 million. With Wuthering Heights, The Housemaid, Send Help, and Marty Supreme all moving down 1 spot, and Iron Lung staying there at number 10. And these are the top 10 movies worldwide so far this year. Pegasus 3 remains number 1 at $615.1 million, which is good for a Chinese film, but nowhere near what we saw this time last year with Ne Zha 2 becoming a $2 billion breakout hit. Wuthering Heights is the 2nd highest grossing film so far this year at $226.3 million, followed by Blades of the Guardians at just over $200 million, Scare Out at $188 million, Scream 7 is at number 5 at $177.1 million, Hoppers moves up 3 spots to number 6. It's made $165 million worldwide, with GOAT at number 7, Boonie Bears: The Hidden Protector down 2 spots to number 8, Send Help down 1 spot to number 9, and The King's Warden now in the top 10 at $90.16 million. So that's what I've got for you as far as the box office, but let's take a look now at the world of streaming, and we will start with the latest numbers from Netflix. These are global numbers for the week of March 2nd through the 8th. We'll get some new ones later today. And at number 1 was the Netflix original movie War Machine, which debuted at 39.32 million views total. You take the hours watched and you divide it by the length of the film or the series. That's how you get that number. That's a good debut for Netflix this year, one of the biggest this year, if not the biggest. Bridgerton Season 4 brought in another 13.1 million views. And then we have another new program at number 3, The Dinosaurs Season 1, which was narrated by Morgan Freeman, produced by Steven Spielberg. It brought in 10.42 million views. The Netflix movie Accused is at number 4. Jurassic World Rebirth is in the top 5 at 6.67 million views. Now they're just taunting me. The Night Agent Season 3 is at number 6. K-pop Demon Hunters continuing its second run in the top 10 with 4.74 million views. Firebreak is at number 8. And then we have the Netflix movie Street Flow 3 at number 9 with 4.45 million views. And the film Trap House rounding out the top 10 at 4.41 million views. These are the most watched programs on Netflix in 2026 since January 5th. And The Rip remains the most watched program of the year so far at 114.71 million views. His and Hers is in second place with 90 million views. Then we have Bridgerton Season 4 at 80 million views. K-pop Demon Hunters actually moves up one spot to become the 4th most watched program of the year. It's brought in 56 million views just since the beginning of the year. So it remains incredibly popular, and it's now a 2-time Oscar winner. People We Meet on Vacation is down one spot to number 5. War Machine's debut was good enough to land at the number 6 spot so far this year, with The Lincoln Lawyer Season 4 at number 7, Joe's College Road Trip at number 8, Kidnapped Elizabeth Smart at number 9, and Runaway at number 10. The movie Durandar, which has a sequel coming out that we're going to talk about in just a couple minutes, is off of the top 10 for now. Let's take a look now at the latest Nielsen numbers. Now, these differ from Netflix because they are domestic numbers only, not global, and they're delayed by about a month because that's when Nielsen decides they want to release them. So these are the most watched streaming movies for the week of February 9th through the 15th, which was the debut of Joe's College Road Trip on Netflix. It brought in 14.15 million hours watched. In second place was 2025's How to Train Your Dragon at 11.43 million hours watched. And then we have the debut of Predator Badlands on Hulu at 9.78 million hours watched. The Wrecking Crew and K-pop Demon Hunters round out the top 5. Then we have A Father's Miracle on Netflix at number 6 with 4.1 million hours watched. And right behind that is another Netflix movie, Homefront, at number 7. The Investigation of Lucy Letby, Overboard, and Night at the Museum round out the top 10. These were the most watched streaming shows for February 9th through the 15th. At number 1 was the new season of The Lincoln Lawyer at 42.38 million hours watched, easily the number 1 show. The Pit is at number 2. It continues to do very well this season at 17.36 million hours watched. Bridgerton is in third place. Love is Blind returns with a new season in fourth place. Bluey rounds out the top 5. Then we have Stranger Things, still a top 10 streaming show back in early February. The Burbs on Peacock, I think this was boosted by its debut alongside the Super Bowl at 11.86 million hours watched. The Big Bang Theory's at number 8. Family Guy's at number 9. And SpongeBob SquarePants is at number 10. These were the 10 most watched streaming shows when you look at them by watch time per available episode. So you take the number of hours watched and divide them by the number of episodes you can watch, and that's how you get this number. The Burbs is at number 1 with 1.48 million hours of watch time for each of its 8 episodes, followed by Unfamiliar at 1.38 million hours of watch time, and The Lincoln Lawyer, also over a million hours per episode for each of its 40 full episodes. Remember, this is not broken down by season. This is just the full watch time for the entire series. Cross, the Amazon Alex Cross series, comes in fourth place with a new season at 982,000 hours per episode. The Pit is in the top 5, followed by Fallout as it wrapped up its second season. This is the week, I believe, after the finale. Bridgerton's at number 7. Stranger Things still at number 8. The Traitors is at number 9. So we have 2 Peacock shows on this chart. That's somewhat of a rarity. And Love is Blind rounds out the top 10. And that's everything I have for you this week. Before we go, though, I wanted to draw your attention to a few things that you might enjoy both in theaters and streaming this upcoming week. First of all, today on Tuesday, The Who's rock opera Tommy is getting an IMAX re-release, so you can catch it in large format if you so desire. Tomorrow on Amazon Prime, the fourth season of Invincible debuts with its first 3 episodes. Then on Thursday, as I mentioned, Durandar the Revenge, the sequel to last year's huge worldwide hit, Durandar, hits theaters just a few months after the original. I think it's very possible we're going to see that film in the top 10 on next week's show. Then on Friday, we have Project Hail Mary. The review embargo was lifted early for that movie. I actually did a review last week. If you haven't seen it, go check that out here on the channel. I think a lot of people are going to enjoy that this weekend. I'm curious to see what the number's going to be. Another movie I'm looking forward to is Ready or Not 2, Here I Come, which is a sequel to the 2019 original. Radio Silence returns to direct Samara Weaving in this, some would say, long-delayed sequel, and apparently the games are just beginning. I'm definitely going to check that out this week. I may throw a review of that up here on the channel. Also hitting many theaters around the country is an animated film called The Pout Pout Fish. It's the latest film from Viva Kids, who also brought us Hit Pig and Night of the Zoopocalypse. Nick Offerman voices a pouty fish. It's all right there in the title. If you're looking for something to watch at home, Peaky Blinders, The Immortal Man, after a very small theatrical release, hits streaming on Friday. I've actually never seen the series, so I don't think I'm going to watch the movie, but I would imagine if you like the show that you would be excited for this. Debuting on Amazon Prime Video on Friday is Jury Duty Presents Company Retreat. This is technically the second season of the show Jury Duty, which is a really, really funny, I guess you'd call it a reality show, but also a comedy show. The first 3 episodes of this season debut on Friday. Then making its streaming debut is Bradley Cooper's not-so-awards contender Is This Thing On?, starring Will Arnett and Laura Dern. And Wicked for Good will be making its streaming debut on Peacock this Friday. Then on Saturday, it's a big week for K-pop fans. BTS The Comeback Live will be streaming on Netflix. This is the return of the K-pop supergroup BTS with a live concert in Seoul. It's their first concert in about 3.5 years. They're back with a new album after completing their mandatory military service in South Korea. This will air at 7 a.m. on the East Coast. It'll be 4 a.m. on the West Coast. So a lot of fans are either going to be staying up late or getting up early if they want to watch the live stream of this concert. And then on Sunday, the 3rd season of the HBO Max show The Comeback will make its premiere. This show stars Lisa Kudrow. Season 1 was in 2005, right after Friends was over. Season 2 is in 2014. This 3rd and final season is airing, of course, here in 2026. I've heard this show's very good. I've never actually had a chance to watch it. And that's what I've got for you this week. I appreciate everybody tuning in, both to this show and to my Oscar recap show. I'm doing everything I can to get my review of One Piece Season 2 up tomorrow morning. I know that a lot of you have wanted to know what I thought of the 2nd season, and it would have been out earlier, but the season came out in the middle of Oscar week. I was trying to watch all those movies and then, of course, getting ready for the Academy Awards. But I actually have a lot to say about this 2nd season. It's going to be a full spoiler review. You can look for that here on the channel. Like I said, hopefully tomorrow morning. And also tomorrow afternoon, I'll be doing my live show, Dan's World, where you can ask any questions that you might have about the Academy Awards and anything else, really. So tune in for that. As I mentioned, I'm going to try to check out Ready or Not 2, and I may throw up a review of that here on the channel. I already have a review of Project Hail Mary up. So it's a busy week, coming off of a busy weekend, and I appreciate everybody watching not just this video, but all the other videos here on the channel. If you like what you see, please consider subscribing, hit that bell so you're notified when I put out new videos. And if you want to become a channel member and get even more involved, I'd love to have you here. But most of all, thank you for watching this video. Thanks to Factor for sponsoring it. Check out more in the description below from them. Until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you then. Bye.